Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Remain Indoors podcast, where we'll be looking at some science news today. And we'll be having a grumble when required. Don't worry about that. And talk about the ways we're keeping ourselves entertained at home. Remain indoors. Hi, I'm your host, Richard Spanners Ready, joining you on a Thursday, which looks to have become our normal 2 p.m. live streaming. You can find us at missedapexpodcast.com/remain indoors, and you can find the stream and you can join us live, like people like Taylor and Sam H, John and Simon. Hello to our live stream. You can chat along. But it's not just me joining you for the strict 40-hour time limit of this stream. We're also joined by Matt Trumpets. How's it going then, Matt?
Well, if I'm going to be completely honest,
no, don't.
Which is always sort of a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm actually a little bit fuzzy this morning.
Hungover?
Not quite hungover, but just like a little fuzzy, because my family took me out for my birthday meal last night.
Ah, good. So you celebrated, because you couldn't celebrate last week. In fact, you were podcasting with me. So no, your birthday is cancelled because you have to podcast on Remain Indoors. But they've made up for it. They've taken you out.
They've taken me out. It's our first meal out since the whole quarantine thing started here in New York.
How was it?
Outdoors dining, socially distant, the way you're supposed to do it. It was really great until I went up to get a second round of drinks and mentioned that it was our first meal out and it was my family taking me out for the birthday. And the guy said, "Oh, well, the next one's on me then." And then I was
nice.
I was like halfway done with my dinner. So I was put in that unfortunate position of having a free beer, but also having a family that was going to be done. And I already had a full beer in front of me. So I basically slammed the one and drank the other one. And the two drinks I'd had before we went out, because of the swarm, it just turned into be a little bit more than I'd bargained for.
I was going to say, you can solve that problem by simply increasing the pace at which you consume that volume of alcohol. In fact, I've upset people in the past when you have to like move on. There's a group of you and it's like a pub crawl, right? And you've got half a beer there or something, and they'll go, "Right, we're moving on to the next thing. Down your beer." And you go, "Well, no, I don't want to. So I'm either going to stay here and consume this beer at a sensible pace, and I'll join you in a minute, or I'm just going to accept that loss and leave that beer there." And people are like, "No, you can't do that. You've got to down it." And obviously when you're like 25 or whatever, you go, "Oh yeah, chug your," even if it's like a full pint, you'll sit and chug it. Whereas now at this age, I'll go, "No, I will either join you later or I will just simply leave that beer and put it down to life."
Yeah, no, that is the wise choice. There's an age, I want to say it's probably somewhere in your mid-30s, where you suddenly realize, where you're sitting there with your friend or your brother, and you're looking at that pitcher of beer you've ordered, and you're like, this is not the same as it used to be, is it?
We don't have to down it. We don't have to. We have a choice. Yes, we've over-ordered, but we don't have to overconsume. So we'll start off speaking about some overconsumption, but not before we bring in our guest this week, which is Dr. Andrew Holding of the Something Something Clever Dude Institute.
That is close.
You're a real
That's
scientist.
Close.
The Neustrom Institute. No, it's named after a famous scientist, Andrew. I can remember which one it is. It's the code cracker guy.
Yep.
That guy. His name is Cumberbatch, from the Cumberbatch Institute. Well, come on, the name is genuinely gone.
You can't. I don't know you. You're just winding me up.
No, I'm not. No, I've forgotten it.
So yes, I have a position at the Turing Institute in London.
Turing, there we go.
Alan Turing, and I also am a lecturer at the University of York.
There we go. And that used to be Cambridgeshire. That's why Cambridge. So that's
I'm still
why
Cambridge for like a little bit longer.
And so London and York are they're right next to each other, yeah?
Just outside.
They have a good train line. But they genuinely have they have a high-speed rail link but before we invented a new type of high-speed rail link, which is a bit faster, but it's actually still quite a quick line.
Let's temper expectations for people outside the UK listening to this. UK high-speed rail link means that it doesn't necessarily stop in every village. It's still probably about 20 miles an hour. So yeah, like in France or Japan, it's like 1,000 miles an hour sonic boom for high speed. So let's just clarify that.
I mean, You're right. It's not a bullet train, but actually the York to London link's really good. It's actually one of a few things. It doesn't stop very often, and it goes about 200 kilometers per hour.
Wow, there we go. So, look, we're going to talk about some consumption stuff because you are a real scientist and you've come armed with such topics as the birth of the cosmos. We're going to talk about the death of the universe as well. But you know me, I like to bring it down to the little things. So first, we're going to talk about my belly a little bit, Andrew.
Your belly.
Yes, because you're a biologist. You do biology things too, don't you?
Yep. No, I definitely have looked at the odd cell in my life. I study cancer mostly, which hopefully isn't in your belly. If
hopefully
it is,
not.
Kind of, we'll sort that after the show.
That would be a grim way to start the show, but hopefully no. At the moment, no.
live reveal of your medical diagnosis. Yeah, don't do that to me ever. Go see a doctor. Go see a medical doctor if you're needing medical treatment.
A real doctor. A real doctor, is that what you mean?
A fake doctor. A fake doctor.
So I love that. I love that you said that on radio. I actually got complaints on BBC local radio when you said PhD doctors are the real doctors and medical doctors are fake doctors. Yeah, I got actual complaints about that, and I was just I said, okay, fair enough, but you can't argue something that is technically true. The way you said it was technically true, but it was also deliberately insulting to medical doctors.
I mean, the thing is, I work with many medical doctors, right. And it's just I totally admit if you're in a hospital ward and you need treatment, you don't ask a scientific doctor. It would be the worst thing ever. I might be able to tell you what's wrong with you. I might even understand all the mechanisms behind it, but I would probably kill you if I tried to actually put any of that into practice because I've never worked on anything the size of a human being.
Fair enough.
Good reasons.
You know, my boy is obsessed with chemistry at the moment because you got a chemistry degree to start with, didn't you? Yeah, he's obsessed with the periodic table. He keeps trying to get me to buy him blocks of chemical compounds and things. I'm like, no. But we're going to have to sign him up for some kind of chemistry kid course. I bet there's like an online lecture course or something he'd like.
I mean, there's loads of things. The trouble is it's all got really weird, hasn't it, recently? But the Royal Institution in London is great for shows. And it's renowned for having this lecture theatre. It's gone back hundreds of years. And they do put on people speaking and they give talks and they often blow things up, which is what most kids like.
That is,
It's a wonderful place.
Okay, well,
They put that down, and they're doing stuff online at the moment because of COVID.
So I'm going to recommend a book for Treeface. I know he probably doesn't read at all, but
he reads all the time.
Spoon,
he's such a nerd. Disappearing Spoon.
Buy him The Disappearing Spoon. It's all about the periodic table. He'll love it.
I'm actually going to sit and write that down. Good. Periodic Spoon. Now, before we get to the big stuff. And also someone, when we said about explosions, obviously there was a horrific explosion in Beirut this week as well. So we're also going to talk about some of the science around that. But before that, we can talk about the explosion in my waistline. Now, I might be exaggerating a little bit. I'm not at the weight I want to be. And at the beginning of lockdown, there was a lack of entertainment. You weren't going out anywhere. So I think a lot of people indulged in food and indulged in a little bit more alcohol. And not only did I drink more alcohol, I'm going to admit that. Hi, I'm Spanners. I drank more alcohol in lockdown. I also was like, ooh, well, what kind of interesting alcohol can we have? It wasn't just smashing down own brand whiskey to make the sad go away. It was, let's enjoy our craft beer and interesting gins and things like that. So what I found interesting about that, though, Andrew, was my weight immediately increased about 5 or 6 pounds, maybe more like 4 or 5 pounds. And then it kind of stayed there. So my body went, this is the weight you're going to be at that level of enjoying dinners and enjoying a craft beer. But I didn't continue getting fatter and fatter, even though I continued with that level of calories. And then I've always found it works the other way too. So I will restrict myself to 1,000 calories a day, and that will get me to a certain weight. And then I will stop losing weight. Like my body's gone, okay, this is your 1,000 calories a day weight. Whereas, a lot of people with calories in versus calories out, they say, it's just simple. It's calories in versus calories out. We kind of get stuck in this habit where if you cut your calories and do exercise, you're going to keep losing or gaining weight forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably more that when you get to certain limits, there are other factors start to come into play. When you start to feel a bit overweight, you probably eat a bit less. The calories in, calories out really is right for most situations. So
Yeah, generally.
it's a simple thing, and to be honest, it works for most people. And I was chatting about this in our house about, both of us are aware that we've been eating a bit and we haven't been really moving at all. And I would say we've got to the point that, you can say, right, we could cut the calories. But frankly, that isn't going to work, because if you go too low on the calories, you're just going to make yourself ill. And you need something. So actually, at some point, you do need to bring up the exercise to get the calories out. And that can just be by walking to work or getting up and doing a run.
Yeah.
It really, and you are right, it does seem to hit the steady state, but usually I think some of that's your own self-limiting as well.
So I just want to address one common argument. I mean, Simon says they burn more calories through exercise, and undoubtedly burning calories, does burn more exercise, as long as you don't go in your head, I ran 5K, so now I can have a scone or an extra scone because it balances out. So a lot of people say, well, exercise, it's not worth it because one run equals one Mars bar, so you may as well just have one less Mars bar. Like, I get all that, but I tend to see, like, if you do have a calorie restriction diet, but you're also exercising regularly, like Matt does, and you introduce that into your routine, then per week, I bet you burn, say, 2,000, 3,000 calories at least from your weekly exercise routine. And now we're talking about a few takeaways that you could happily have. Let's have Matt get in first.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to something that I read a long time ago when I was still cycling.
Yeah.
Which was that, the run, you only burn so many calories, but that puts your body into a heightened metabolic state that does last for a longer period of time. And so someone who commutes back and forth to work by bike, for example, will actually wind up dropping a lot more weight because there's another 30 or 45 minutes of calorie burning that goes on before your body settles back down to where it normally is, the amount of energy it normally burns at its sort of low rest state. So it's a little bit, exercise is a little bit better for you that way. But I found that on what I felt to be the same diet, I lost a lot of weight. I do the intermittent fasting thing. But after a few years, I started to gain weight. And it was only when I started exercising did it come back off again.
I mean, the one of the things sort of comes up a lot with exercise, of course, is you can't out-exercise a bad diet. So Spanner's idea of, if you do some exercise and you have some takeaway, but I mean, reality is you need to also eat healthy. And it gets really boring, but it's the obvious things. Eat healthy, do the exercise, and it works. If you then try to say, I can have a cheat meal because I've done the exercise, it generally doesn't, because the takeaway food is just so terrible. And the other thing which is depressing is actually the human body is really efficient.
Yeah.
So going for a run doesn't actually burn many calories off. But there's a load of other reasons to get fit, like better cardiovascular, better, just ability to do all the things you want to do in your life.
Yeah. And you'll have healthier bones when you're older. Look, we know what we're talking about. Kevin Spacey said it best in American Beauty, his character. What are you exercising for? I want to look good naked. And that's what actually for me, it's, I want to look all right in a t-shirt, So, I'm 8 pounds away from having a reasonable profile in a shirt and feeling okay when I step out of my house. But I'm also, you go 8 pounds the other way, and I'm in fully fledged like man boob territory. So this is the careful sliding scale we're on about here. And yeah, for me, weight is as well. It goes straight to my face, so I don't want a stupid round Malteser head. That's one of my motivations too. And of course, karting as well. So for karting, if you lose 5 pounds over the course of a minute lap, we're talking like 0.3, nearly half a second for 5 pounds. And I'm probably 8 or 9 pounds overweight as well. So for my birthday, Matt, I know we can't do the big Missed Apex karting event, but I am going karting with a few friends. And now that that's booked, I'm going, oh my gosh, this is actual lap time. Not only that, but I'm going to see people who last time they saw me, I was about 8 or 9 pounds lighter. And that has a significant effect on my face. And I don't want the first thing they say when they see me after all this lockdown stuff is to go, jeez, you've had a good lockdown, son.
They don't start calling you the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Exactly. Look at him. Maltese ahead. But yeah, it's interesting though, isn't it? I mean, Andrew, that there's so much pseudoscience and quackery around, dieting and stuff.
And one thing you mentioned is why do you do it? And there's so much health issues that go beyond the body. So, I mean, I think you hit it right. You do it for yourself.
I want to look pretty. That's all. Is that so bad?
Well,
is that so bad to admit?
Are you doing that for you? Or are you doing that because of the way you feel society makes you want to do it?
Well, I guess it must be society, because if society coveted big, round Malteser-looking people, big, round Malteser balls, I would probably be like, yeah, check me out. I'm already dead sexy. Well, I suppose it probably... Yeah, I'm trying to fit a societal image of what, like, a handsome man looks like. Must I be ashamed of that, though, Andrew? Must I?
No, you don't need to be ashamed, but you need to not make yourself miserable over it. That's the key thing here. Trying to get fit and healthy and be miserable are not good combinations.
Okay, but if I'm walking around and I can feel my belly poking over my belt and my t-shirts look rubbish because I'm squeezing out of them, that does make me unhappy. And I'm really willing. I'm willing for someone to turn around and go, "Oh, that's because you're a Matt." You can tell me that's just because I'm a terrible, vain, shallow person. But that does have a mental health effect on me if I feel I look bad.
Well, you are, but that's not relevant to the comment I was going to make.
Okay.
You have actually hit upon what, in my entirely non-scientific opinion, is the single best guide to do I need to consider a diet or exercise, which is my clothes no longer quite fit.
Yes.
Because you can look in the mirror and it can be, and we know this, especially for young women, it can be very much of you're seeing what you think you're seeing and not what's actually there. You can look in the mirror. I've looked in the mirror and gone, geez, I think I'm getting fat. And I've gotten on the scale and I've actually weighed less. Your brain can really mess with you. So your best guide, I think, in my opinion, is your clothes. If your clothes are starting to feel a wee bit tight, then yeah, maybe it is time to look at your diet. Maybe it is time to get out on some walks a couple of times a week and give yourself a little bit of help.
I do. Yeah, go on. I was just going to say, I do empirically do that, Matt, because I use the scales. So I do go by the scales and I do measure myself too. And it is amazing. I can be the same weight. One day we'll look in the mirror and go, looking pretty fly, Richie boy. Oh, look at that. You're filling that chest, baby. And then other days I can go, oh my God, you disgusting lump of bread and beer. What are you doing? And the scales will say the same thing. So a lot of it is very much psychological. Sorry, Andrew, I talked over you.
I mean, what I was just going to say is that thing is, the changing clothes is a really good way to monitor yourself. But of course, then we're going to add in the fact that different people will have different, you can just buy new clothes.
Yes.
And I think this is where, this whole idea of where it's societal pressure and the idea of shaming people and all that is obviously really not a good thing to have in society. Whereas, Spanner's talking about his own body, he's allowed to do that because it's his body. And I'm not going to tell him what to say about it either. And I think it's really bad. But, I've met people who cycle to work huge distances and they're not happy with the weight. But I know they're burning more calories than I ever do. Yeah. And I think this is why it's so much more about you and how you feel and your health than it ever is about that sort of external societal pressure. And I think that's the key thing is I'm quite lucky that I seem not to put on a huge amount of weight, but I'm not particularly active. I know I'm not because I've been driving to work for the last how many years. Now I'm locked down, not going anywhere. Whereas other people I've seen be really active and not be able to shove that weight. There is a genetic propensity for how people put on weight and how their bodies respond to extra calories.
And just to jump to the chat room there, someone said that Tom said, I think it's Tom, said by the sound of it, all Spanner's friends are Northern. That is my go-to impression is, it's really bad. Like I do have a lot of Northern friends, which Sam Watley has accused me of saying, some of my best friends are Northern. So you're implying that I'm Northernist, which I am slightly, but yeah, whenever it's like something a bit, like pig-headed, I do, go straight into my kind of, Sheffield, Yorkshire accent. Very bigoted of me. I apologise. Yes, most of my social circle is Northern. I've got a lot of friends in Newcastle as well, and they really hate my Geordie accent. They go, "Oh no, Rich, we don't sound nothing like that. Oh, never mind. I'm off to the pub to tap off with some last lake," and they say it exactly like that. Yet they don't like my impression of them. Right, so just to wrap up this kind of health and weight and everything before we go on to explosions and such like, I think a big part of weight loss, because I'm now set myself down a path for the next month to kick me off, I've done this before. I know what my body responds to. My big hurdle really is fitting in with the family, like that big evening meal. And the big evening meal is, for us, it's a very communal thing as well. It's a big family bonding thing. I never had that as a kid, and I resisted it at first. I even said, why do we need a dining table? We'll just eat from a trough in front of the TV. But I'm so glad my wife turned me around, because dinner's like a great family connection point for us. But they will have like a lasagna or pasta, and my wife's wonderful at making these things, and she doesn't put on a pound of weight. I hate her. So yesterday, I said, don't worry about me for dinner. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. I'm already fat. I've got dinner already in my belly. I will burn some of the fat in there, and I feel fine because I don't feel hungry at the moment. She responded by sending me a picture of some spicy chicken wings and legs in a thing that she'd bought. And she was like, are you sure you don't want these? And I went, I am not sure I don't want those. I will instead have all of them. And I thought, okay, well, there's no carbs. So that's all right. There's no carbs. So I sat down with my bowl of spicy chicken with extra hot sauce, and they had this pasta thing. But they end up looking over going, oh, that looks nice. Can I just have one? Can I just have two? And they ended up eating like most of my chicken. But Andrew, for me, that's where I fall down a lot, is that family routine. So I had to argue with my wife today and go, look, no, I'm sorry. I know that it messes stuff up, but I cannot sit down and have a big pasta meals for the next month or so.
I mean, we got to find what works for us.
Yeah.
And if family, that means work for the whole family.
No.
I mean, my kids complain about hot food, so I
Do
just
they?
lie to them.
They complain about hot food.
They used to eat it fine as kids, like spicy.
Oh, I see.
And
Right.
I used to, because I used to cook for them, and then at some point with schooling and jobs and stuff, my wife started doing the evening meal. And I used to cook really hot food. They never complained. And then at some point they decided, oh, it's too spicy. It's like, no. So I still just cook them and just lie to them.
And just say it's not spicy. Yes.
It's not spicy at all.
Psychological.
As I'm burning.
But anyway, that's my plan, Matt, is I've put my foot down at home, and I know what works for me, which is really kind of treat the calorie restriction as a endurance test for five or 6 days. And then at the weekends, just chill out a bit. And if I want a burger at the weekend, I have a burger at the weekend. If I want a takeout, I have a takeout. But I know over the course of a month, having that 5 solid days off in the weekend where I really just go, you don't need that. You don't need to eat that. You don't need to eat that. And also, I don't care about not eating breakfast. So I can go until like 1 o'clock in the afternoon without food, without the communal aspect at home. So I know that works for me. But yeah, it's finding what works for you and just go, right, decide, I'm doing it.
Yeah, well, I think you really hit on it. It is what works for you. I mean, there are people who will get up and they'll have a tiny morning meal, and they'll have a tiny lunch, and they'll have a wee snack, and they'll have a tiny dinner, and they'll lose weight on that. I could never do that, because like once I start eating, it's like certain other enjoyable activities, no matter how good you are at them, you kind of want to finish eating once you start eating, if you get my drift here.
That's like me with a bottle of Jack Daniels. Once you start it, you may as well have the whole bottle of Jack Daniels.
Exactly. So for me, having the time restriction on the meal works great, because I can eat in a way that I enjoy.
Yeah.
But it still effectively restricts my calories so that I don't accidentally overconsume calories, despite my exercise. But other people, they can't go that. They get really hungry, and they can't get over that. Like that's more of a problem for them than just eating a little bit and stopping. So I think you're right. It is very much down to finding what suits your personal style. But at the end of the day, we're still talking about calories in and calories out.
Yeah.
And
well, of course we are. And like I do avoid carbs when I'm doing this, and it's not because there's anything special or magical about carbs. It's because it's so easy and delicious and moreish to just have a massive bowl of chips or a big bowl of pasta. So if I cut that out, like if I have like chicken and salad, I'm not going to go, oh, do you know what I need? Another bowl of salad. Like I'll never do that. I'm not going to reach over and go more. Or I didn't have my fill of radishes in that meal. Whereas with chips, I could quite easily go, you're going to finish that? You're not finishing that? Yeah, I will have all of those.
Well, that's just because you've never had my wife's broccoli slaw, which is almost impossible to stop eating, I will say.
Broccoli coleslaw. Oh, no, we've lost Dr. Holding. He's back. He's back. Do you know what you've done? You've turned your video off in protest of us not going on and talking about big sciencey things. That's what you've done.
Yeah, that was exactly what happened. It wasn't that my internet failed.
Okay, let's start with the less let's start with the less fun thing, simply because it's been in the news, and then we'll talk about some more fun stuff as well. This explosion in Beirut, I know nothing really about it other than what I saw on the news stories. Someone in our Patreon Slack group shared a picture of the crater that was left next to the towers, and you hear there was an explosion in Beirut. You go, okay, well, there's explosions everywhere all the time. Seeing the hole in the land that this explosion left, and then the devastation around it, led me instantly to assume it was fake. And so I went to research that stuff, and people had put videos up, and I saw one video where there was the bellowing smoke, and you could see the spark of electrical connections being broken, and I was like, wow, that's big. That's but that wasn't even it. That was before the main explosion. When the actual explosion rocked through the video, my breath was taken away. I couldn't believe it. It was almost exaggerated. If it was in a movie, you would go, oh, come on, that's a bit much. And in common with all these videos that have been shared around the internet, you've only seen the first bit because people are just in sheer terror and panic, and the cameras have been turned away. Andrew, do you have any more insight than me on what the hell caused such horror?
Yeah, so it was a load of fertilizer that had been left.
Wow.
So something like they confiscated this fertilizer, left it there and this is thousands of tons of fertilizer, since 2013, I think it was, and have just not done anything with it. And people may be aware that fertilizer made of nitrates also is an explosive.
What's it called? Sorry, fertilizer?
Nitrates.
Nitrates.
So nitrogen-containing compounds, because nitrogen's really, really stable and makes up most of the air.
Yeah.
The nitrates are when you react nitrogen and oxygen. It wants to break back down into nitrogen because that gives it a lot of energy. And that means if that reaction starts happening, it explodes. And that's why a lot of the World War II explosives were nitrogen-based.
Wow. But
so
the scale of it, though, I mean, they were talking about a warehouse full of this stuff that had just been left there. And I'm assuming that, in the UK, we don't have a massive warehouse like this.
So we shouldn't, but it looks like Matt's got something to say.
Well, I've been following sort of the news side of that story a bit, and it actually was a ship, a Moldovan ship out of Georgia going to Mozambique. But along the way, the owner, who was Russian, ran out of money and said they had to take on additional cargo, sent them to Beirut, where the ship was declared unsafe. Eventually, the crew was kicked out, the cargo was confiscated, and ever since then, the harbor master has been writing to whatever body is in charge.
Oh, no.
Whatever body is in charge of the port, saying, we this is unsafe. Can you please, we have 3 offers to take this off our hands. Can you please pick one and choose? And they never did.
Oh, man,
so
that
it's been
makes
sitting
it...
since 2013.
That makes it even worse. I mean, Andrew, we talk about the red tape and, it's health and safety gone mad. They've done it again. But I mean, that's why we have all this health and safety stuff.
And this is health and safety. This is exactly why we do it. And these explosions have happened before. So I do a schools talk and other groups, older audience when they want to listen, about the harbour process, which in the UK sits on the GCSE, so 16 plus exams. And what the harbour process was, it converts, basically allows you to make ammonia from hydrogen and nitrogen. So that means you can take gases you can get relatively easily, and then you can make ammonia, and then you can convert ammonia into nitrates. Is a relatively easy bit of chemistry at that point. And this was really important because early in Germany's history, they wanted to be able to make fertilizer to make bread for their country, and they invented this harbour process. And it's a fantastic bit of chemistry. Part of that story is there's a plant in Germany which is owned by BASF, and they're storing a huge mixture of ammonia nitrate and ammonia sulfate because that's how they make the fertilizer. And I seem to remember that because it used to get stuck together, they used to blow it apart with dynamite. So not the best of ideas, but because it was mixed, it shouldn't explode. But what happened was bits of the ammonium nitrate sort of got together in lumps, and they blew up. I think it was 4,500 tons of this stuff, and the explosion killed 500 people, injured thousands more, and it was devastating. And people in the area, the other countries at the time, heard the explosion, thought someone invented a new form of weapon. And it's not shocking because whilst that wasn't pure explosive, we're talking about kiloton explosions, which if you've come across the phrase kiloton, you normally think of atomic bombs. And I think Hiroshima was around about 13 kiloton. So we're talking about probably something which was 10% of Hiroshima going off back when people had never seen an atomic bomb. And that got people very terrified, people very upset. And of course, health and safety would have come in to stop them using dynamite to separate out fertilizer. Those things would have happened. So chemistry has a long history of it. So everyone would have known that, and clearly the fact it was taken away from being dangerous, that this was a really dangerous amount of explosive to have. And for it to all go up in one go means that explosion there was probably a good chunk of, again, a Hiroshima-sized explosion. So this is not small.
The estimate I saw was 1/4 of a kiloton.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers keep changing because it depends on, because I don't believe all that fertilizer have exploded, because it's actually quite hard to detonate good explosives. It's one of the things that people don't quite realize is if you get high explosives, you can actually throw them in the bonfire and use them as a log to keep you warm. You need a detonator. So, yeah, we're still talking about huge explosive potential, which is why that you get that video. You get that, I think Spanners alluded to that massive supersonic shockwave coming out.
Yeah, in the chat, apparently they said it. Sam H says that it was moving clouds. No, sorry, that was Caterham Nut. Sorry, shockwaves pushing the clouds away thousands of feet in the air. Like, so it was big enough to move the clouds. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the compression wave as well, because these really big explosions, as they make the air denser, you forms a cloud. And you get the same thing when you see a plane go supersonic, but it's a little bit less dramatic when it's a plane rather than a whole harbor going up. So yeah, it's a terrifying bit of chemistry. Don't store large amounts of explosives in your
Well, this is it. Sam Watley,
device.
We'll finish off with Sam Watley's comment in the chat room. All around the world, authorities have called Zoom meetings and have said, do we have big warehouses of nitrate anywhere? So, with a lot of health and safety legislation, it does sometimes take these big things to either initiate or remind the world that you need to take health and safety seriously. And I do really get upset with people when they hand wave away health and safety, or when the newspapers will pick basically a well-meaning minor official who is trying to enact the health and safety guidelines from this handbook and hasn't quite got the training to put it into practice with a certain degree of common sense or whatever, and has ended up going, okay, children are banned from that toy because this looks dangerous. And then the Daily Mail will put out an article, it's health and safety gone mad. And then that inspires this culture of, health and safety's this stupid rubbish thing that we don't need. And it's exactly the same as political correctness. Why can't we go back to the 70s where we can light things on fire and put spikes on the top of fences and stuff like that?
We could do what the US does then, ban Kinder eggs.
Do what? Serious?
So in the US, Kinder eggs are banned because they're toys and chocolate mixed, but handguns are fine.
In the USA, Kinder eggs are banned because it's a mix of toys and chocolate. Why is what is the thinking that you would eat chocolate, or that the toy makes you?
It's one of these things that comes up as like things that are wrong in the world.
Oh dear!
And I don't know if it's just because it's marketing to kids is bad, or because you eat the toy. This is really where Matt needs to come with his expertise. Does he have a stash of illegal Kinder eggs?
No, we don't, unfortunately, have a stash of illegal Kinder eggs. But I do believe it's because, as you say, they view the toy as being a potential choking hazard for the young kids. And I will point out, as lunatic as my nation often is, toddlers cannot actually buy guns on their own.
Okay, good. Fair enough.
That is true, but they do kill many people every year with them.
Yes.
Andrew, let's go on to a much cheerier subject, and it's one that's been, it's been. I think we might have covered it slightly before, but we've got some specific news on it. It's the eventual end of the universe. I believe you have some breaking news. Hopefully, it's not in the next 6 minutes, because we're fine after that because the show ends. But what's this? What's all this about the end of the universe, Andrew?
I mean, the main thing that's come out is Katie Mack has brought out a new book, and she is a scientist who writes about the end of the universe.
Right.
So you can now, because I know you love this,
I do.
Or Treeface loves it, one of you two, or maybe the whole family just enjoys talking about how everything is going to die.
Well, it's it's a complicated subject with kids. When I was a kid, our family simply said, well, when you die, you will go to heaven and you will be reunited with all your family. Everything will be perfect. There's no pain. You only have to go to the toilet once a day and it's all lovely.
Really? You got that detailed?
Yes.
Did you ask the obvious question, what if I'm not really interested in hanging out with all of my family? What do I get then?
Well, no, but this. Okay, look, I know this is not quite science, but I'll share this briefly. I was very inquisitive about this kind of stuff, and I did try and ask, the difficult questions, and I did try and ask questions that would clarify the situation. And it wasn't because I was trying to be difficult, and it wasn't because I was like anti-religion as a kid. I was actually dead into it. Because I had been indoctrinated from a young age and I'd gone to Sunday school every Sunday, church-going family, and I knew in my heart, absolutely, I knew that the truth was that there was a omnipotent creator of the universe that we knew as God. He was great because he sent his only son to earth to save us, and when we die, we will be saved by him in this place called heaven. And I thought that was just brilliant. Like, I was genuinely all in. And when you know something is brilliant, you want to know more. You want to know more answers. So like Matt, like you say, well, what if I don't want to hang out with people? One of my first questions was, what happens if people remarry? Which wife do they end up with?
I mean, I was brought up Catholic, so I know the answer to that.
Okay, so before we go...
It's not very modern.
It's not very modern. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, before we go any deeper into that, we do open the lines to call-ins, and somebody has taken us up on that. So we've got M on the line with some comment or question, just connecting to audio. And let's say hello. Hello, M. I can hear you tapping. And I can hear myself. Hello? No, unfortunately, that looks to have... What's our hit rate at the moment, Matt, with callers? 50-50, wasn't it, with successful call-ins?
No, I think it's a little bit more than that. I think we're up around the 65-70%. So, it's not bad.
That's not
it's
bad.
Not bad. It happens. I feel bad though.
Yeah, I feel bad.
I'm wondering if it's Martin Dooley wanting to ask his question about spicy food being addictive.
Oh, okay. Well, let's assume that is. Quick answer from Dr. Holding. Is spicy food addictive? And I'm sorry, Em, we can't hear you, so we're going to have to just remove you from the what's it. Sorry. Right. Is spicy food addictive, Dr. Holding?
I don't think it passes the definitions of addiction at all. But that doesn't mean you can't... There are things that you sort of can do because you enjoy, and then there's actual addiction like alcoholism. It's a bit like there's strong argument, are computer games addictive? And there are quite a lot of people on the sort of researching this go, well, they might cause you problems, but that doesn't mean they meet the category of what they define as addiction.
So technically, you're not really answering the question then. Okay.
The trouble is with a lot of these kind of things is things like addiction and stuff are very, very strongly regulated and very strongly defined because, and if you go into any of these sort of mental health, actually any disorder in the US, they basically have to be in a book because that's the things you're allowed to award health insurance for. And that has a huge impact on definitions of things, which is totally non-scientific. It's about what you have to pay out for to make someone better.
So, like, a good example would be nicotine is addictive because it actually affects the receptors in your brain. So your brain thinks it needs nicotine to make itself function. Therefore, you're addicted to it. Heroin has that same... It's very Moorish, That's the big problem with heroin.
I mean,
very
I haven't got a huge amount of experience with it.
Me neither,
I have tried the odd opiate.
So,
because you can get codeine quite easily in this country, which is quite hard to get in the US.
I've definitely had a lot of codeine for injuries and such like. And that's free. They'll give that out to you for free. Free at the point of use.
Right. As long as you have a good reason.
But then something like gambling or cannabis, for example, might be psychologically addictive in that you are compelled to keep doing it and keep doing it more to get like a dopamine hit, but that might not class itself in the same chemically addictive bracket.
Yeah, and is this very hard sort of whole body literature on what definitely is addictive and what isn't. And, someone's just asked, do chilies affect receptors? Yeah, chilies basically are a nerve toxin, so they do quite well on that front. But you might not get addicted to it, but you probably get used to the flavor and you get used to liking it. And if you burn off all your nerves in your tongue, that's going to end up eventually making you not taste anything that's bland.
Now, I read interestingly that capsaicin, which I think is the active ingredient in the chilies, actually tricks your tongue into thinking it's a different temperature than it actually is.
Yeah, so that is what it basically does. It confuses the signaling in the tongue, so you are getting confused signals. That's why you get this heat taste. It's not setting off a normal taste, but because the whole, I mean, you may be aware of this, the whole taste model we're taught at school with these 4 tastes on different parts of the tongue is complete rubbish and has never been true. And there's loads of taste receptors on the tongue. They're all over it. And that little map with the 4 bits is just something someone drew once in a textbook for, I don't know, they got asked to draw something. That's what they came up with.
Well,
So most of our modeling of taste that we teach kids is wrong. I mean, actually, one thing that annoys me is how much of school education on science, you sort of try and fight these things and they won't shift because that's how it's always been, even though it doesn't necessarily make it easier.
No. Right, well, we should circle back to where we were because we came 5 degrees of separation prompted by the secret agent M phoning in on the Zoom call, but then saying nothing. But we do have to be aware that we are being tapped by the secret services now. Just before that, we're talking about the difficult conversations around the death and the end of stuff with kids, talking about the end of the universe. So, I used to just ask those questions. And very quickly, my parents got very, very tired of that. My mum, also a Roman Catholic as well, Andrew, so we're probably related. And my dad, a Protestant, which is, by his own admission, he used to call it Christian light. There was a lot of leeway on the strict rules and interpretations around the Bible.
I had a similar setup, and it was an awkward time growing up.
Yes. Well,
it
yes,
was not I learned. I have a very different memory of what happened in the United Kingdom during the 80s.
Yeah, and which Lord's Prayer do you say? All ends differently.
Oh,
yes. So we had all that. We had all that goodness. And Sunday school kid. And then at a certain age 12, you get confirmed into the Protestant church. You have to have confirmation classes. And it's the priest, and he is there. I think he was called a rector. So the rector is giving like 8 kids at a time this course of lessons. And I just treated it like any other school lesson. And, my parents would greet me. Yeah, Matt's already wincing at this. My parents used to already greet me with, well, God works in mysterious ways for every question. Who are you to question God's things? I'm like, oh, geez, defensive. I'm literally just trying to work out how this awesome thing works. And what's the other things I got done? Lots of hand waving, lots of dismissive arguments. So I just would treat these lessons with the rector as a chance to go to the main man. Because who's the number one authority in all of this magical world you're being introduced to? It's the rector. He's like the main guy. He's like the president. He's God's exec on earth. So I'm like, cool. When do you get a chance to ask the rector questions? So I would like bombard him with questions. And then I'd go, I want to be like you because you're as Christian as you can get. And so I asked him, I don't know if you had any similar situations, Andrew. I asked him, why did you become a rector? Why? And he went, oh, well, God told me in a vision to become a rector. And so straight away, I'm like a kid. I'm like, oh, okay, whoa, we're on some next level stuff here. You've literally spoken to God. And he's like, yes, God came to me in a vision, told me to be a rector. I'm like, how did you know it wasn't a dream? It wasn't a dream. And got very angry, got very, very angry. Because this is what he's been saying for years and years and years. In the end, they refused to confirm me as a member of the church because they said I was not committed. And I got really upset with this because I thought I'm more committed than anyone else. I'm more committed than anyone. Sorry, I'm ranting a bit here. But I literally, as a kid, I was like, I'm more committed than anyone else here because I'm asking the questions, Matt.
I can just see tiny spanners. But no one else in the class even asked a single question. What are you talking about?
It was kind of exactly like that. And at that age, I really set about, and this will make, I set about and I went, if I can use science and logic to prove to people who don't want those answers and to people who don't believe in God, I can set about with logic to prove that there is plausibility for all of this stuff and it's super real and I can work out the mechanics of it. And then, Andrew, that is the journey that kind of led me to libraries every Saturday morning to study science. And I will say, no offense to anybody on their religious beliefs, for me, that journey has taken me to being a not religious person at the end of that. Matt, sorry, go on.
I know we don't normally do comment of the week, but Stuart in the chat is suggesting perhaps you misheard and they were saying you should be committed.
Oh, come on, no. Yes, I was a slightly unorthodox kid. I will give you that, but no. Andrew.
So, if you don't want to go to church and you don't want to ask people, therefore, we were talking about Katie Mack's new book,
Sorry, yes,
The
of course.
End of Everything, which is, no, it's fine. It's fine. This show never follows any.
No.
linear path.
Okay, so the reason I went up there is because, yes, we do talk about this with kids, and I can't give them the same easy answers that my parents gave them. So we've just addressed it blunt, head on. And from their own mortality, because kids never think about their own mortality, really, they've quickly compounded that with, well, what happens to the rest of the universe?
So we don't completely know, I think the answer is, but we do have some ideas. But one of the things that I found, have we lost everyone? Okay. One of the things I found really interesting in this book and that Katie's been talking about is there's this step when the universe forms that it grows far more quickly than it should. It's called this sort of phase of expansion. And, you know, this is where we get these ideas of dark energy and dark matter. Dark matter is the thing that holds the galaxies together because there's not enough to stick them together, and then dark energy is the thing that makes the thing expand fast enough. So basically, when physicists don't know something, they put the word dark in front of it.
Okay. Yeah.
That's it. You know,
Racist.
It's like, you know, it's fine. I'm sure we'll have a dark genome and the dark computer games. I don't know. Anyway, she makes this point that because we don't know why this expansion occurred, we just know we need it to make the maths work. We don't actually know if the universe isn't just going to tear itself apart at any moment, which I'd never come across as a theory before.
Yeah.
So she says, you know, if whatever causes expansion happened tomorrow, maybe we'll have this big tear and it'll be all over.
Oh, so hang on. So we had, are we talking about expansion as in some event? So the beginning of the universe had an expansion event and that's finished now. But if we have another expansion event, we're done.
Yeah, so you have the Big Bang, which makes all the stuff. And then because the dark matter has to be there to make the maths work now, it then shouldn't have expanded as quickly as it did for a bit. And we know how quickly it expanded because of things like cosmic background microwave radiation. And this is the idea that as the universe expanded to a certain point, all the light and energy transferring things got frozen out. And that we see as this cosmic microwave background. And was a huge discovery when it was found. You put the telescopes up there and it's just this signal murmuring away in the background.
So, and that's from the very beginning of creation. My son, when I said to him about this unexplained expansion at the beginning of the universe, and I said, you know, it's all happened in like a few minutes, like in seconds even. And my son went, like, did time definitely work the same back then? And I went, I don't know. Could it be that time just took longer? Everything expanded at the same rate, but time was different.
So time is a really weird, confusing thing. Right, let's just accept it. No, so a lot of physics, a lot of science actually doesn't need time to be a thing that goes forward. It doesn't need this kind of idea that causality happens is something that comes up with Einstein's relativity and it becomes essential. Before then, basically the definition of time and timed arrow is entropy increases. So when everyone talks about how entropy always has to increase, this idea that disorder has to increase as time goes forward, that's a very circular argument because actually the reason why entropy has to always increase is we define that as time.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. So quickly, just to not be confusing, Granny Annie says, I thought it's still expanding. No, that's two different things, isn't it? So whilst it is constantly expanding and we can tell it's expanding by looking at the redshift of objects outside of our galaxy, we're talking about extra expansion events, aren't we?
Yeah. It went a bit faster than it should have. Yeah. Quite a lot faster than it should have for a little bit of time.
For a very small amount of time.
Yeah.
So why? But that's because everything was compressed together. If it happens now, surely it would be over a much smaller space and we'd be fine. It's like, oh, that galaxy over there expanded and blew up, but we're good.
Well, I mean, the universe has got to a very weird situation that now, because the size of the galaxy are expanding at the speed of light, and things, you can't communicate information faster than the speed of light under the laws of physics as we understand them. The edges of the universe can never pass information between them. There will be no contact between them. So they're disconnected in terms of physics.
So what's the name of this author that you said, or this scientist?
She's a science communicator and a scientist, obviously. She's called Katie Mack, and she's just brought out this book, which is called, just say a moment ago, The End of Everything.
The end of it. What sort of level do you think that book is pitched at? Like, could I? Okay.
You could, yeah. It's a popular sci novel.
Okay, a novel.
Well, book.
Book,
Not
got
novel.
you.
It's not a story.
So,
I don't know why I said novel.
So let's just expand that quickly to picking up and reading these books. As I mentioned earlier, my journey out of religious belief did have me as a kid, pre-internet, just sitting in the library reading stuff and whatever I could get my hands on. So I don't read books anymore because like TV's brilliant now. TV's so good now. Stephen Hawkins did a book, A Brief History of Time. And whilst I didn't understand everything in there, it was enough to open my eyes to some concepts. Are we talking about that kind of level of book?
I was suspect it's easier than A Brief History of Time.
Ah, there we go. And then the other
Given
one.
I think Brief History of Time is pretty harsh, actually.
Well, I mean, it lost me when it talked about, you turn you turn something around one way, you see the other side, and then you keep turning it around, and instead of seeing the first side, you see a third side and then a fourth, and stuff like that, and things being up and down, and that lost me a little bit. The other book that's on, go on.
He was famously told that if you put equations in a book, he'd lose half his audience for every equation he put in.
Yes.
And he just kept putting them in, just kept doing it.
I am not able to now recite it back to you, but I have definitely thumbed through it. And maybe now would be a good time to have another read through it, actually, as well.
Hilariously, my daughter in her 7th grade science class asked so many questions when they talked about astronomy and the universe and stuff like that. Or I think it might have been 8th grade, her 8th grade class. The teacher, who was a biology teacher, just gave her a copy of that book instead.
That's fantastic teaching. And then the other book I read quite recently was Richard Dawkins, not everybody's favorite dinner party guest, but he wrote a book called The Selfish Gene about, the starts of life and reproductive urges, right down from like protein level as well. And that absolutely blew my mind, but I definitely didn't understand all the mechanics of it. Have you read? You must have thumbed through that one, Andrew.
I've not actually read The Selfish Gene. And it's a bit out of date now.
Is it? No.
So it was good for its time, but there are other books. So lots of stuff that Adam Rutherford is putting out.
Adam Rutherford. Rutherford. Okay, cool. So this book, I've forgotten the name of the first book that we're actually talking about now.
Katie Mack.
And is it all focused on this potential expansion event, or is this just one part of her book?
No. So, that's one of the things I came across in the stuff that's coming out, because there's loads of news articles
around it,
yeah. Chatting to, and I've been reading because I haven't obviously got the book yet. And yeah, that's one thing that came up. I hadn't come across the idea of his big tear before, and I'm interested to see what the book has in it.
Is that your favorite end of the universe potential scenario, the big tear?
No. Well, one, it's own nuance. I mean, I don't like the universe to end, but I quite like the idea of where we all end up. And because of entropy, things have slowly, the heat death's happening. But the last stars will be these little red stars that have just been burning away very slowly.
Yeah.
Because it sort of feels like little planets huddled around a campfire. I find something romantic about that.
Or just
that.
last one here, turn the last sun off on your way out. My favorite theory is, and you can tell me if this is stupid, because obviously, like, I'm that bloke down the pub who's read a couple of science books, and then he's like, it's a scientific fact that the universe is going to end with giant squirrels. But I like the idea that our universe is like a membrane. There was like a membrane university thing, and then there's lots of, like a sheet of paper, and it's lined up against all like other sheets of paper with a little gap. And then at some point, if the two bits of paper accidentally wibble a bit and make contact, you have like a massive explosion that destroys both universes. I'm going for that one. Exploding membranes. Yeah.
You want the dramatic.
Yeah, and I want to see it, and I want it to be televised, and also somehow survive it.
Well, you have your escape pod into another universe.
Shall we? Let's go away.
Sci-fi.
Let's go away from death. Let's go away from the end of everything and go to a subject that we didn't actually get to the last time you were on. Can't believe it. Unbelievably, we didn't get to one of our topics. And this is one that fascinates me loads. It's the formation of our solar system and how it came to be. Again, my son has started getting into all the physics of it, and he's just fascinated with why are planets spinning? Why don't they fall down into the sun? And why don't they fling off? And I'm like, well, to start with, there probably were some planets that flung off, and there probably were some that have been eaten by the sun and stuff. But why don't you give us a little bit of a one-on-one, a 101 about our place in the solar system?
Our place in the solar system.
Well,
totally
like
insignificant.
Totally
you don't count for anything.
All right, tell you what, let's start here. How the sun was formed. I find sun formation fascinating in the fact that we were born in like a stellar nursery.
Yeah, so this is SUN, not SON.
Yeah. I know how my
Bitcoin
sun was formed. Yeah, a lot of fun.
So, so your question was really about this idea: why do we get planets? Why do they orbit, and all this other stuff? So when these gas clouds that end up forming start collapsing down because gravity, so things form
Where
does
the gas cloud come from?
So it depends which type of stars we're talking about. So the early ones would have just come from the hydrogen produced in the Big Bang. Nowadays we have the remnants of supernova, so we have a lot more interesting elements out there. So these waste products from previous suns, and it gets a little bit circular here, but if you sort of accept that through several generations of sun, we start to build up other elements because that's the nuclear reactions that happen in the center of the sun to make it glow, build these other elements. You eventually get these lovely stellar nurseries, you put it, clouds of gas from supernovae and other things where they just distributed their material across the galaxy. And when they collapse down, as they collapse down, like many things, they start to speed up and they heat up, and eventually they get crushed together. And that's how, if you have enough material in that area, you'll start to get a nuclear fusion to happen at the center of what will become your star. And you need enough material for that, but you also have sort of a gas cloud around it. And what's really cool, because you ask, well, how do you get planets and such? Like, well, because of the whole things like conservation of angular momentum and the fact that you need, if something's moving, it keeps moving in space, you sort of end up with this situation where things are all spiraling into this gas cloud. And that really sets up movement in the galaxy and the movement in the solar system that's going to happen that can allow planets start to form from their own little clumps of gas and material. And when they form, they have, some will fall in the sun, some will go away, but really a few, if they're really lucky, end up orbiting the sun. And that's basically, they are falling into the sun. They're just also moving fast enough that they, every time they go to fall, they just end up being a little bit further around. And really it's the same true of something like the International Space Station. It is falling to Earth at the same speed as you or I would, but they're going forward fast enough that every time they fall, they end up going forward a bit and they end up falling a bit more, and it goes around in a loop.
Yeah, this is the bit I was struggling to explain to the boy, Matt.
It's very much like the Hitchhiker's Guide, where he explains how they fly. It's you fall, but you simply don't ever.
You miss the ground.
You
miss
fall
the
at
ground.
the sun and miss.
Yeah.
And then because of all that conservation of angular momentum, which is talking about, so the fact that when things are spinning, they stay spinning. As everything's sort of circling down into the sun, the planets end up having that momentum too. And then that's why planets which don't rotate the same direction as everything else is a bit weird. And that's when we start to assume that maybe they crashed into something, or maybe the planet formed because another planet was hit by an object that entered the solar system, and therefore all the momentum of that collision carried into its formation.
Yeah. So let's give an example of that. Like, what's a body that isn't moving how we would expect?
So Uranus is 90 degrees out from where you would expect. So it almost rolls around on its side. And Venus goes backwards, I think, just to confuse everyone.
Not clockwise, anti-clockwise backwards, but it spins the wrong way.
Yeah. So it orbits. They all orbit the right way, but Venus day spinning is the opposite direction. So it has a really, really odd day when you look it up.
I think what my boy struggles with, and I've definitely struggled with this concept before as well. It's just, from our point of view, everything's so static. Like, the Earth is this distance from the sun, and it goes around every year, and it never falls in. And it just seems so blinking convenient that we just happen to be going the right speed without slowing down or speeding up and all that kind of stuff. And you just go, and obviously in another phase of my life, and I'd go, and that's why God's definitely real.
Yes.
Oh, Matt?
But it's really just enough lottery tickets. That's the explanation. Because we don't see all the things that didn't wind up with the perfect parameters to stay where they are. They all fell into the sun and are part of the fuel for the sun now. So that's always what people, and I think that's what people don't think about when they say, well, it's got to be a miracle. It has to be a design. Well, no. We just don't see all the wreckage.
Well, it's my favorite one, Andrew, is the water in a puddle. And he keeps, he'll go, oh, isn't it brilliant that this hole was designed perfectly to fit all of my water in it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the same. Matt saying, if this solar system couldn't support life, there would be nobody here to sit and go, "Ooh, that's convenient. It supports life."
Yeah.
Or your puddle, and this is something you have to always battle with. There's an observer bias, there's a confirmational bias. You're here, you're the person who can see it because it enables you to be here to see it.
But you can imagine, obviously, with the evolution of man and the evolution of science, everyone is my son. So all the early people were my kid going, hey, how come? And then when you identify that you are on a planet and you go, how come we're not falling in? That seems, and even things like the moon. And you go, geez, if we didn't have a moon, we'd probably be really, we'd be really screwed because we wouldn't have tides and life wouldn't have come out of the sea. And look, when you have an eclipse, it's the perfect size to block out the sun. And you have all these things that just seem so perfect, for life on Earth and for humans.
That's because you've evolved to live here.
Yeah, that's right. It's the other way around, isn't it?
But there's loads of things you can find in evolution where you just go, that is a really stupid design. I've probably ranted before about how badly designed humans' eyes are.
Yes,
Yes.
You've said there was a spot in the middle. You've said there's a spot in the middle.
Yeah. You got the blind spot because the nerves are in front of the retina. You put the wiring in front of the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a stupid design. But then squids went involved independently, and they decided to get them the right way around. So, we find convergent evolution because similar solutions have been found by chance to the same problem, but sometimes they work a bit better than others. And the other one, which would be knees are pretty awful. Old people will generally tell you knees wear out quite well on human beings because they're badly designed.
Yeah.
But you can find animals which have repurposed their legs. So the knees, the smaller joint, and they use the heel a lot more, and it bends backwards and they can run faster. You've all seen an ostrich.
Okay,
Don't question how well they can run.
So a friend of mine, though, he said to me, if evolution was real and it's survival of the fittest, why do we get, cancers? And of course, you're a cancer scientist. A lot of the cancers are in older age as well. And, the thought, struck to me is that apart from some childcare and societal benefits, evolutionarily, we're all irrelevant. Like, evolution doesn't really care about us once we've reproduced, does it, Andrew? So, Matt especially, we're biologically irrelevant and we're not designed to live this long.
Yeah, though the childcare one is interesting because there are a few species who have childcare, which I'll kind of circle back to because it is quite interesting. But this idea of, why do we get cancer? Because we're not perfect. Because it's a better one to look at is, why do men have nipples?
Yeah.
They don't serve any purpose, and the answer is the reason why evolution hasn't got rid of the male nipple is because it doesn't cost you anything to grow one either.
Yeah, so it's there. It's not causing you any harm. It's not stopping you reproducing. Therefore, why do we have them in the first place? Well, do we all start off ladies? Because basically humans are the same species, whether you're male or female. Right. Okay.
So
yeah.
When the genes appear to give you mammary glands in the species, some of the genes are still active in the male, and it's not causing a problem.
Matt.
Same reason that the Geo Metro and the Toyota, what was it, Corolla or whatever, are the same car. They share the same basic chassis, and then you just bolt on different bits in a nameplate, and there you go.
Yeah. So circling back though to the parenting and sort of childcare. I mean, what's interesting is very few species have menopause, which is evolutionarily an odd thing because what it does is as soon as a woman goes through menopause, she removes herself from the gene pool, biologically speaking. But of course, what it does is it frees you up to then parent. So some species, most species, can keep having babies till they're 900 years old. Till the lifespan. Elephants pop babies out forever. Whereas if you look at killer whales, they go through menopause. So you have another species that does this.
But they live in pods.
And if you look at what happens to a child if their post-menopause grandmother dies, the survivability of that child massively reduces. Where if you look at the father dying, doesn't matter. They're fat, they just eat lots of food and they're useless. So quite like humans. And there's real distinction, and the sort of matriarchal culture of killer whales is really interesting, and generally the women share food, they help up the pod, the men literally are just so they're selected to be as fat as possible. That's what the society has gone for, and that means they're absolutely useless for anything.
You're describing Sheffield.
They die young.
Okay, Matt.
Are you just bringing this up to cast shade on spanners? I mean, really?
What?
But if you were a killer whale, you would be the sexiest thing ever.
Wow, I haven't gained that much weight. Jeez, I thought I'd caveated that at the start. Yeah, and like honeybees, the males do no work, and all they do is reproduce. That's their only function.
I mean, it's slightly harder when you start comparing to things that aren't mammals.
No, okay, that's fine. I'm just saying if we could vote for one system or other, I'm not saying I would vote for that. No, I'm just saying I would hear them out. I would hear out the honeybee party that was laying that down as an option. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Jeez.
No.
Wow. We've gone off on many tangents this week.
What species of animal would you most like to be?
Oh, okay. I know this. Okay. Before I say which species of animal I would want to be, firstly, I want to clarify that I do not want to be any animal that cannot scratch an itch. So I don't want to be a dolphin that can't have like an arm and an elbow that reaches around and scratches an itch. And that's why they make that noise where they go. That's them going, oh, my back, I just can't quite reach it with my flipper. I'm sure I can do a better dolphin impression than that, but...
Go away and practice. As long as your northern accent.
Yeah. I've got many dolphin friends, okay? I'm not dolphinist. Yeah, so no, whatever animal we do, at the very least I want paws, not hooves, and a thumb, if at all possible. So I guess technically like a sloth. Yeah, sloth. There we go. I pick sloth.
Yeah, sloth.
Yeah.
So the idea of being a bird doesn't appeal?
No! Flying? No. Why would you want to be in the air? Is there food in the air? Not really. Some bugs. Not down with that. Are there video games in the sky? Andrew? No. All the best stuff is on the ground, ideally inside. No, wouldn't want to be a bird.
All the stuff that eats you is on the ground.
Wouldn't want to be a bird. Matt, do you want to be a bird? Bird?
Well, I hadn't really considered it. I was thinking like jaguar or cheetah, one of the cool cats, But hey, if I'm going to be a bird, like a hawk or a falcon, something predatory and fast. Yeah, I'd be down with that.
Do you know what that is? That is your ego speaking.
What?
That's why you want to be like an apex predator. Look at me, I'm a big man. I should be a panther. That's what you're doing.
No, I mean, I've seen a jaguar eat a crocodile. Wouldn't you want to be an animal that could eat a crocodile?
Yeah. No, you might have sold it.
Or you could be a blue whale, and you could just spend hundreds of years lounging around,
waiting to mate. That would be your job.
Just chilling, having your body weight supported at all times.
I think what happened is I picked the best one straight away, and everyone else got upset that they couldn't also pick sloth. That's what happened. So
if you're a sloth, though, be one of the sloths that were prehistoric, the really huge ones. These ginormous sloths you get in the fossil record.
No, want to be a little one to evade predators. We're going to get out of here, chaps. Thank you so much, Dr. Holding, for joining us. You always lend us a credibility that we do not deserve. Please tell people where they can find you and your work.
So easiest way to find me is to follow me on Twitter as Andrew Holding, and I'll be streaming computer games tonight again on Twitch, again as Andrew Holding.
Yeah, computer game. What's the computer game for tonight?
So we're still working through Star Trek Judgment Rights. So it's a 1990s game. We've done a few of the missions now. It got very weird last time. We ended up in World War II, Germany. It was a strange game, but we solved it. And we discovered it was an all-powerful being who was playing with us. Yeah,
don't be fooled. Dr. Holding is not the super seriously science person he has to be to do lectures and appear on radio with me and to come on podcasts. And you've thrown me in between. Like, when we're like, okay, thank you for that conversation, Dr. Holding. Now we're going to play Duran Duran with their latest hit, Georgia with Duran Duran. And that's playing. He's acting like a 12-year-old in the studio. And then when we come back on air, he's like, well, yes, the composition of most organic blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you liar! You are a liar. You're like my wife when people come round and she pretends she's not mean to me. Dr. Holding, find out Dr. Andrew Holding on Twitter. Matt, at MattPT55. What you plugging, buddy? What you pushing? What you promoting?
You said, what are you plugging? And I was going to say my wife, and then I thought better of it. Jeez. And I'll say my wife's books. Go buy them.
She's
promoting working on a new book.
Yeah. At A Weaver Writes on Twitter.
Yeah. For the moment, that's what's up.
Okay, good. And you can follow me at Spanners Ready. My Formula One podcast is called Missed Apex Podcast, and that's at Missed Apex F1. And I am at Spanners Ready on Twitter. You can be my friend on Facebook. Search for Richard Reddy on there. And you can buy a range of currently only Missed Apex. Might do some Remain Indoors gear. A range of Missed Apex merchandise by going to missedapexpodcast.com/buy stuff. Should I do some Remain Indoors stuff too? Let me know. Vote with your feet and let me know. I can knock that together. We've got a slightly adjusted logo. I think we're keeping the name Remain Indoors because why not? You know, at birth, someone decided to call me Richard and to call Matt. And, you know, that is what that cute baby looked like. When they grew up, they didn't go, oh, he doesn't look like that baby anymore. Well, when we were born, we were called Remain Indoors. And as a grown-up podcast, maybe it'll do just fine to remain indoors. I'm your host, Richard Spanners Ready. I've been joined by Matt Two Rumpets and Dr. Andrew Holding today. Until next time, work hard, be kind, and have fun, and remain indoors. Yeah, it's good. Sneaked just under the 40-minute allocation for the